March 15, 1952, 6:47 p.m. The front desk clerk at the Dixie Hotel looked up from his register and saw Bumpy Johnson walking through the lobby. Bumpy wore an expensive suit and shiny shoes, showing he had money and power in every step. Bumpy walked up to the desk. He was in downtown Manhattan for business, and he needed a room. He just wanted a clean bed, a shower, and a place to sleep for the night. The clerk's face changed, and his eyes narrowed. He picked up the phone and called the manager. Within 2 minutes, a heavy-set white man named Gerald Mitchell came out from the back office. He didn't even look at Bumpy's face. He just looked at Bumpy's skin, and everything changed. "We don't serve your kind here," Mitchell said in a flat voice. "This is a respectable place. Now, get out." Bumpy didn't argue. Bumpy didn't threaten. He just nodded and turned to leave. But here's where the story gets interesting. As Bumpy walked toward the door, Mitchell grabbed his arm. He physically threw Bumpy toward the exit. Bumpy's expensive luggage, the bags he had set down, were grabbed by 2 bellhops and thrown into the street behind him, his belongings scattered across the pavement like trash. Bumpy stood on that street corner, looking at his luggage. Then looking back at the hotel, he said one sentence to the bellhop closest to him. "This hotel will be mine before the sun sets tomorrow." What nobody knew, and what history doesn't tell you, is that Bumpy Johnson didn't just take over that hotel. He turned it into a symbol of power that would shake all of downtown Manhattan, and he did it in 48 hours, using a method so smart that every powerful person in New York would copy it for years. To understand how a man thrown into the street by a racist hotel owner could own that same hotel in 2 days, you need to know who Bumpy Johnson was in 1952, what he controlled, and why the most powerful people in New York feared him more than they feared the police. By 1952, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster, he was an institution. He was New York's most strategic crime leader. He understood power in ways that made regular mobsters look like beginners. Most people thought of organized crime as loud, with guns blazing, territory wars, and bodies in the street. But Bumpy had figured out something. The Italian mob was still learning. Real power isn't about making noise. Real power is about silence. It's about controlling the invisible systems that make a city work. Bumpy controlled the numbers racket in Harlem. For those who don't know, numbers was a daily lottery game played by working poor people. They would bet a nickel, a dime, maybe a quarter on 3-digit combinations. That sounds small, but multiply that by 10,000 people betting every single day in Harlem alone. Now multiply that across all of New York's black neighborhoods. The numbers racket made millions of dollars every year. But numbers was just one part. Bumpy also controlled protection racket, gambling operations, loan shark businesses, and an information network that would make intelligence agencies jealous. He had connections in every police station, every political office, every business district. He knew things. He heard things. Before anything happened in New York, Bumpy usually already knew about it. More importantly, Bumpy had built something the Italian mob couldn't. He had respect from the community. When police arrested a young black kid for a small crime, Bumpy's lawyers would get him out. When a Harlem family couldn't pay rent, Bumpy would pay it himself. When a local business owner was being threatened by loan sharks, Bumpy would take care of it. He was protection. He was investment. He was community support. By 1952, Bumpy Johnson was probably the most powerful man in New York that nobody in the white power structure took seriously, and that was exactly how he liked it. Now, here's the background about the Dixie Hotel. The Dixie was in downtown Manhattan, in a white neighborhood. It was a fancy 4-star hotel that served business travelers, rich tourists, and political leaders. The hotel was valuable, not just for money, but for what it represented. It stood for downtown Manhattan's exclusivity, and the owner, Gerald Mitchell, stood for something else. He stood for the old system that kept black people out of white spaces. It was the segregation system that most of America lived under in 1952. The thing Mitchell didn't understand was that his system was already falling apart. The civil rights movement was starting to grow. The post-war economy was giving new chances to black business owners. And men like Bumpy Johnson were smart enough to see what was coming. The Dixie Hotel rejection wasn't new for Bumpy. He'd been thrown out of hotels before, refused service at restaurants, and discriminated against by many businesses. I expected that part, but what Mitchell did physically, throwing a man into the street and humiliating him in front of witnesses, statement that was Mitchell. saying that a black man had no rights, no dignity, and no place in downtown Manhattan, no matter how rich or powerful he was. Bumpy understood something that a lot of people missed. Sometimes disrespect needs to be answered not with violence, but with dominance. Sometimes you don't destroy your enemy, you own them. And that's exactly what Bumpy decided to do. What made this possible was Bumpy's network. He had connections everywhere. He knew accountants who worked with big banks. He knew lawyers who could handle real estate law. He knew businessmen who owed him favors, and politicians who knew that helping Bumpy sometimes meant helping themselves. He knew police officers who knew which cases to investigate and which to ignore. Bumpy had spent years building this network carefully, like a chess master setting up his pieces. Most importantly, Bumpy had access to money. Not just the money from his criminal businesses, but connections to even more money. Old money, political money, money looking for investment opportunities. The question wasn't whether Bumpy could afford to buy the hotel. The question was whether he could do it fast enough and quietly enough that nobody would see it coming until it was too late. But this wasn't really about the hotel. Hotels are just business property you can buy or sell. Then what this was about was sending a message. The message was simple. You can't humiliate Bumpy Johnson. Not in the street. Not in your business. Not anywhere. If you disrespect him, he won't destroy you. He'll take what's yours and turn it into a symbol of his power. That message, delivered the right way, would echo through New York's power structure. It would tell every business owner, every hotel manager, every white establishment that refusing service to Bumpy Johnson came with consequences. Serious consequences. That evening, after being thrown out of the Dixie Hotel, Bumpy didn't go home angry. He went to his office, a private room above a jazz club in Harlem, where he did business away from police eyes. He called 3 people. First was Marcus Henderson, a black accountant who worked at a big investment firm downtown. Marcus had owed Bumpy for 5 years. Bumpy had helped his brother avoid prison through smart legal moves. Marcus owed him. More importantly, Marcus knew finance. Second was William Turner, a criminal lawyer with connections in real estate. Doc had represented Bumpy in many cases. He understood how property transfers worked. Third was Vincent Carlyle, a white businessman and political fixer. Vincent was useful to Bumpy because Vincent had connections. Bumpy didn't naturally have access to certain banks, politicians, and money sources that still followed the old racial rules. The meeting happened at midnight in Bumpy's office, the Dixie Hotel. Bumpy said simply, "I want it. I want control within 48 hours. I want the deed transferred, the management changed, and I want Gerald Mitchell to understand what it means to disrespect a man in his own city." "That's impossible," Doc said right away. "Hotels like that don't change owners in 48 hours. The legal process alone takes weeks. The paperwork, the title searches, the financial arrangements. Then we move faster." Bumpy interrupted. "Find the money. I don't care where it comes from. Call in favors. Make deals. I want that hotel." Marcus leaned forward. "There might be a way. The Dixie Hotel is profitable, but not amazing. They have debt. A lot of debt. What if we go to the bank that holds their mortgage?" "Explain," Bumpy said. "Banks loan money based on the borrower's ability to pay it back. If that ability suddenly looks shaky, the bank gets nervous. The bank calls the loan. The hotel owner has to refinance or lose the hotel. That's where we come in." Vincent nodded. He understood where this was going. "We make it look like the Dixie's business is falling apart. Rumors, gossip, whispers in the financial world that Mitchell is in trouble. How do we do that?" Doc asked. Vincent smiled. "I have friends at the Times. I have friends at the financial papers. I can arrange for some very specific rumors to spread about the Dixie's financial health. Nothing that's technically false, but everything that's technically true. The Dixie's occupancy rates go up and down. The owner has had some legal troubles, nothing big by itself. But when you put it all together, a story appears. And while the rumors spread," Marcus continued, "we go to the bank. We show up as interested buyers, but we do it quietly. We see how interested they are. We find out exactly how much pressure they want and how badly they want out of this deal. Meanwhile," Doc added, "we have people start showing up at the Dixie. Black customers with money. We try to book rooms. We make a scene when they refuse. We create a public relations nightmare. The hotel gets a reputation for racial discrimination. That hurts their business. That hurts their future value." Bumpy listened to all of this. Then he made a decision. "Do it," he said. "But I need this in 48 hours. By Friday evening, I want that hotel's keys in my hand." That's not possible, Vincent said. Even with everything we're doing, the legal paperwork alone, then we make it possible. Bumpy cut him off. I'm paying you to make the impossible possible. That's the whole point. What happened next was pure genius. Within 6 hours, rumors had started spreading through New York's financial world. The Dixie Hotel was in financial trouble. Gerald Mitchell had been making bad business decisions. The hotel's reputation was getting worse. The civil rights movement was making it risky to own segregated hotels. Investing in the Dixie was getting dangerous at the same time. 3 different attempts were made to book rooms at the Dixie by black customers who had been coached by bump people. Each was refused. Each created a scene. Each brought witnesses and word of mouth. By the next morning, stories were spreading about the Dixie refusing service to paying customers because of their race. By Thursday afternoon, the bank holding the hotel's mortgage was worried about their investment. By Friday morning, they were ready to talk to anyone who could take the risk off their hands. Friday morning, 9 a.m. Marcus Henderson and Vincent Carlisle sat across from the bank's vice president, James Morrison. Morrison was nervous. You could see it in his hands, the way they kept moving across the fancy desk. The Dixie represents a problematic investment, Morrison said carefully. We're seeing signs that the hotel's business is becoming unstable. We're concerned about our risk. What Morrison really meant was, we're seeing rumors, bad press, and racial controversy connected to this property, and we want it off our books before it becomes a big legal problem. How much of the mortgage is left? Marcus asked. $287,000. Morrison replied. The hotel's appraised value is about $520,000, but with the current market and the reputation problems, he trailed off. Vincent leaned forward. We might be interested in taking this off your hands if the terms were right. What kind of terms? Morrison asked, suddenly more interested. We could refinance the debt, Marcus said. New investors, fresh money, a complete management change. We'd take all the risk. You'd get paid in full. No mess. Clean deal. Morrison's eyes lit up. This was exactly what he wanted to hear. A way out. I'd need to see the financial backing, Morrison said. I'd need to make sure your investors are real and can cover this kind of money. Vincent smiled. That can be arranged. We're looking at 3 different investment groups, all interested in downtown Manhattan real estate, all very interested in buying a hotel property with real value. What Vincent didn't say was that one of those investment groups was Bumpy Johnson's network. What Morrison didn't know was that the paperwork was already being prepared. Within hours, Doc Turner had written up the first legal documents for a complete mortgage transfer and refinancing. Several parties were supposedly involved. The paperwork was complicated enough to look real, but vague enough to hide the real people. By Friday afternoon, Morrison was ready to move. He wanted this deal finished before the weekend. Weekends meant time for people to check the details. Weekends meant problems. If we can close this by 5 p.m. today, Morrison said, we can have the paperwork signed and filed, and the mortgage transfer would be complete by Monday morning. That's fast, Doc said carefully. But maybe possible. What about the current owner? Marcus asked. Gerald Mitchell will need to be told. Morrison waved his hand like it didn't matter. Once the mortgage transfers, Mitchell's ownership is just on paper. The bank is the real owner. When the bank changes hands, the property changes hands. Mitchell will find out soon enough. By 4 p.m. Friday, the paperwork was ready, signed, legal, and official. At 4:47 p.m., a messenger arrived at the bank's offices with a cashier's check for $287,000, paying off the Dixie Hotel's mortgage in full. The check came from an investment group that included shell companies, some of which were connected to Bumpy Johnson's network. Though the links were hidden on purpose, the bank took the check. Morrison signed the transfer documents. The Dixie Hotel's mortgage was now owned by Bumpy's investment group, but the bank still technically held the property as backup for the original debt, which meant that legally, ownership was still complicated. The legal setup was made to be that way, a temporary state that would be fixed when Bumpy made his next move. Saturday morning, Gerald Mitchell arrived at his hotel to find out that his mortgage had been transferred. The bank told him this with a formal letter. Mitchell called the bank in a panic. What did this mean? Did he still own the hotel? Who had bought his mortgage? Was his property at risk? The bank's answer was cold and official. The new mortgage holder had agreed to keep the debt structure. Mitchell's ownership of the building was unchanged. But the bank's relationship with his business had changed. There were new terms, new rules, new restrictions. Mitchell was stuck. He owned the building, but not the financial system underneath it. He controlled the property, but not the debt. He was a king on a property that was no longer fully his. Then, on Saturday afternoon, a lawyer named Doc Turner showed up at the hotel with another set of documents. The documents were a formal notice. The new mortgage holders, the investment group, were using their right to take full management, control of the property until the debt was paid. This was standard real estate law when a mortgage was in trouble. But the investment group didn't want to manage the property. They had a representative who would take over right away. The representative was Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy walked through those same front doors that had thrown him out. Just 3 days earlier this time, he didn't walk in as a guest looking for a room. He walked in as the owner. Behind him was a document, signed by the state. Behind him was legal authority. Behind him was the mortgage system itself. Gerald Mitchell was standing in the lobby when Bumpy arrived. Mitchell's face went from confusion to recognition to total horror in 3 seconds. Mitchell breathed. "What are you doing here?" Bumpy didn't answer right away. He simply looked around the lobby. He looked at the front desk, the marble floor, the grand staircase, the crystal chandeliers. He looked at the paintings on the walls, the bellhop uniforms, and the register. Then he looked back at Mitchell. "I told you," Bumpy said quietly, "this hotel would be mine before the sun sets tomorrow." "Well, it's Saturday. The sun's still up, but I own it anyway." Bumpy handed Mitchell the legal documents, the mortgage transfer, the management control notice, everything official, everything signed, everything absolutely binding. Mitchell's hands shook as he read the papers. His face turned white. "This is impossible," Mitchell said. "You can't just... This isn't legal." "It's completely legal," Doc Turner said, stepping forward. "The mortgage transfer was done by the bank. The management control was given to the main stakeholder. All of this is documented, signed, and binding." "Here's what's going to happen," Bumpy said, his voice calm and steady. "Starting now, this hotel is under new management. I'm taking over operations. You, Mr. Mitchell, have a choice." Mitchell stared at him, confused. "What choice?" Mitchell asked. "You can quit as manager and leave with your reputation safe. Or you can stay and watch me take apart everything you built. I will fully integrate this hotel. Black guests will stay here. Black staff will work here. This will become a symbol of progress in New York. Your legacy will be that you either fought progress or you accepted it. Your choice." Bumpy turned to the entire hotel staff, front desk, bellhops, housekeeping, management. Everyone was watching. Everyone was silent. "I am your new owner," Bumpy announced. "The hotel's policies are changing. Starting now, we will serve all customers equally, no matter their race. Any staff member who has a problem with this can quit now. Any staff member who stays will be treated fairly and paid fairly. That's a promise." The head bellhop, the same man who had thrown Bumpy's luggage into the street 3 days earlier, started to speak. Bumpy raised one hand. "No explanations needed," Bumpy said. "You are following orders. Your orders are now different." Word spread through downtown Manhattan like wildfire. By Sunday morning, newspapers were reporting the story. A black businessman had taken control of the Dixie Hotel through mortgage investment. The hotel was changing its racial policies. Integration was coming to downtown Manhattan, whether the old guard liked it or not. The political leaders were thrown into chaos. How had this happened? How had a black man managed to take over one of downtown's most exclusive hotels? Who was paying for this? What was the plan? The answer was simple. Bumpy Johnson had used the system against itself. He used finance, he used law, he used information and rumors. He played a smart game that the old money people didn't even know they were playing. Monday morning, Gerald Mitchell came to Bumpy's new office, which had been his old office, but now belonged to someone else. "I'm resigning," Mitchell said quietly. "I can't be part of this." Bumpy nodded. "I respect that. You'll get a settlement, 6 months of salary, a letter of reference saying you managed this change professionally. You can keep your dignity. You can move on." Mitchell took the offer. He knew he had lost. There was no point in fighting. By Monday evening, the Dixie Hotel had completely new management. Black staff members were hired for jobs they had never been allowed to have in white hotels. Policies were rewritten. The hotel was getting ready to open its doors to everyone, no matter their race. By Tuesday morning, every major newspaper in New York was running the story. Black businessman takes over downtown hotel. Integration comes to establishment. The Dixie Hotel's new era. But more importantly, the shockwave went through the power structure, the real estate community, the financial world. And the political leaders. How had Bumpy Johnson done this? The method was so clean, so legal, so smart that it was shocking that he hadn't used violence, he hadn't used threats, he had used finance, and law, and strategy. Within weeks, other black business owners started asking Bumpy's lawyer, Doc Turner, for advice on similar takeovers. If you could take over a hotel through mortgage moves, what else could you buy? The Dixie Hotel became profitable almost right away. Why? Because it was now open to black travelers, black business people, and black politicians, a market that had been completely shut out of. Downtown hotels suddenly had a choice. The hotel filled up. Occupancy rates went from 67% to 92%. In the first month, Mitchell's risky investment became Bumpy's goldmine. Other hotels started integrating on their own, hoping to avoid the same fate. The Dixie Hotel became a symbol not just of integration, but of economic power. Black money could buy things if black people were smart about it. Bumpy Johnson hadn't just taken over a hotel, he had proven that black business owners could compete at the highest levels of American business. He proved it using strategy and skill instead of violence. Gerald Mitchell moved to Connecticut and opened a small restaurant. He lived quietly for the rest of his life. The man who had humiliated Bumpy Johnson in the street had learned a lesson that stayed with him forever. You don't disrespect people who understand power. Here's what most people miss about this story. Bumpy didn't just buy a hotel, he showed something revolutionary for 1952. Showed that economic power was stronger than racial power. He showed that if you understood the system, the financial system, the legal system, the social system, you could turn that system against itself. Bumpy Johnson didn't need a gun to own the Dixie Hotel. He needed strategy. He needed patience. He needed connections. He needed to understand that power isn't just about force. It's about intelligence. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come through the front door demanding respect. Real power moves quietly through the system, through finance, through law, through paperwork. Real power takes what it wants, while everyone else is still trying to figure out what happened. Bumpy Johnson lived another 16 years after taking over the Dixie Hotel. He died in 1968, but his legacy, that's forever. He proved that a black man from Harlem could own downtown Manhattan if he was smart enough.